You don't want to reinvent the wheel every time you have a new location. We need good systems, we need good processes in place that we can move to different locations and that we can expect to get the same results, the same consistency that we're getting. And it does start in the back office.
You and I have been very aligned on this, which is just how important consistency is for a brand, especially when they have multiple units, right? I think about the back office as being this backbone to the restaurant where you need to have consistent back office operations so that every single one of your locations is providing that same level of hospitality every single time. If a guest comes into location A, they should expect the same experience at location B as they should at location C, right? And being able to make sure that's all set up from the back office side of things allows that a greater opportunity to actually happen. I know at Tab, what we've done is be able to really isolate individual locations and spending types so that the data coming in allows operators to see what is actually happening at location level, whereas a traditional credit card is not going to do that. I would like to go in a step further with you and say, how do you see that back office, especially across multiple entities, driving consistency for those operators?
Sure. And I think this is important also to look kind of into two roads, right? Because we have lots of clients, and I'm sure there's lots of listeners that are single unit, right? But then we definitely have the multi-unit when visibility starts to get lost. But consistency is just as important in that single unit as it is from the multi-unit, right? I want my guests to have the same experience every time they come in. And I think, a lot of that, even from a single unit to a multi-unit, it starts with training. I think that's something now that we have a lot of different resources for, a lot of different softwares that really can kind of help build that. But a lot of times it's out of reach to think about, hey, I'm going to have an entire app that's going to be devoted to training my people and the cost structure with that, the time, things like that. And I think those types of investments are really well thought out on the front end. And I think that also, as we start to expand from that single unit to multi-unit, standard operating procedures in place, processes in place, having those things identified so that we can, I don't want to use the word cut and paste, but so that they're already set and that we can move them over to the next one, I think it's incredibly important. You don't want to reinvent the wheel every time you have a new location. You don't want to, and especially as we expand and we grow and maybe even concurrently, you can't reinvent the wheel because your visibility is getting lost, your ability to be there and control it is being lost. So we need systems, right? We need good systems, we need good processes in place that we can move to different locations and that we can expect to get the same results, the same consistency that we're getting. And it does start in the back office, but then it translates to what the customer gets. And I think training is a critical piece of that. But I mean, there's even if it means reinvesting in the business, right? And in capital, when it comes to I need to redo my patio, or I want the patio to look the same at location 2 as location 1, and making sure we have the ability to spend and create that experience for the guests is crucial.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely with everything that you're saying. Ultimately, when someone's trying to grow, it's not to do it all over again. Right? Yeah. There's elements of what you've proved worked once that you want to do again. Starting from scratch every single time would be quite painful. And I think a lot of people end up going through that process where they said, all right, I built this success once, I can do it again. And if they don't have the process in place, they end up starting from scratch, right? All of a sudden building materials have changed between opening up the first location, the second location, and you don't have that data pipeline coming in to recognize that ahead of time. So all of a sudden something now is 30% over budget because you weren't tracking it early enough, right? And you can see this, maybe it's the labor market has shifted and now you need to invest more in labor. Building consistency is a full-time job. It's not just copy and paste. You want it to be copy and paste because you've done it successfully here and you can do it again. Going back to that soft skill element, we want the data to be able to speak for itself simply so that you can spend more time with people, more time with the guests, more time talking to your staff, more time building that menu to be quite similar in a way that you want it to be to that last, to give you that consistency. When things change, like building expenses, like construction costs, supply changes, overall geographic changes, you need to have that data coming in very easily and simply so that it's very, very effective for you to make that right decision at the right time.
Yeah, 100%. We want to be able to replicate, right? Not start over. And I think, back to one of your original points, and I think, as we do have new locations, it is easy for spending, right? And for credit cards to be given out, we have to get these locations up and running and those types of things, which I think Tab has created an exceptional tool with being able to, provide that visibility, provide control, set limits, and make it so that it is an easily digestible and, analytical tool to control. In so much as we on that replication, I think, something that we've seen a lot of success with our multi-unit operators, one of the services that Cervoni provides is an inventory and AP mapping service, right? Because you don't want your managers in the back of house constantly going through everything that's being uploaded and mapping and doing all. You want them out on the floor creating the consistent experience for the guests. Yeah. So this has been something we've seen a lot of success with, and that's one thing that we can replicate in order to make sure that we have people on the ground, that we're creating that guest experience. Because in the end, nobody's coming to any of our restaurants solely for food, solely for service. It's an experience. And that requires our people's eyes out on the floor doing what they're supposed to do and what they should be doing. So there's numerous different things that we can do to do it. But I think that there are some solutions readily at hand to be able to provide that, especially as we scale. Definitely.
You just don't want people in the back office sorting through things when they could be with a guest. It's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that.